Big Z Reviews. Hi, my name's Brandon Zarzyczny, but you can call me Big Z, and today I'm doing a book review for Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And this book has been kind of a bit of a buzz lately. I think it's also picked for Jimmy Fallon's book club for the summer. And I've been reading a couple other books lately that aren't fantasy, so I thought I'd give it a shot, and I enjoyed it. It's definitely a different book. But, I'm a gamer. I'm a fan of games, and it's about two people making games and kind of falling in and out of love, even if it's not romantic. And so I thought I'd check it out, and it is good. I enjoyed it. It's definitely it's like an alternate history for the history of video games. Like it's just like if these people had existed, Sam Masur and Sadie Green, if their unfair studios have actually made these games, these Ichigo and all the other games, what would our gaming culture be like? I mean, it's interesting idea, because essentially, all of they mention other games a lot, not they go into too much, but they mention the games they love, or the games that inspire them, or the games that are going on in that current time. And the only one I marked out for was Suikoden. The Suikoden series is one of my favorite series, and it's one that not too many people are huge on anymore. But but it's interesting because it's kind of takes place early on, not in the 90s, most of it, so it's kind of before so many of the studios became so big. And then but even now you still have indie darlings, but it feels like most of the indie games now, they kind of get bought up by bigger studios, or even the stuff like Epic Game Store, they'll buy it out and it'll be exclusive to the Epic Game Store. But I mean, there's still room for indie games. But again, a lot of the too now indie games, they have to, if you want to make it, you pretty much have to use someone else's engine, and that's a big part of the story. That they want to make the game engines is actually a big part of the story, interestingly. But the idea is that there are these two kids, Sadie Green and Sam Masur, and that they're kind of linked together by tragedy, or as a kid, Sam, his mother died in a car crash, and his foot was absolutely crushed, and he didn't talk for a long time while he's having surgery after surgery, and he's in the hospital, gaming room playing games. And then Sadie Green comes in because her sister is undergoing leukemia treatment, and then they meet up and they start playing games together. But they play games for hundreds of hours in the hospital, but he doesn't realize that she's getting community service hours, for the synagogue, and that she, even though she loves kind of being with him and playing with him, she's also getting a timesheet and rewarded for playing for so that's when their first time they break up. Then they meet again when they're both in college, she at MIT and he at Harvard, and then they decide to start making games together. And I think that the writing is good, but I think that it's not exactly consistent, because I feel like Gabrielle Zevin is most comfortable writing for Sadie Green. But sometimes I feel like when she writes for Sam Masur, it goes back and forth. Occasionally, he is straight up autistic. He's heavily autistic with how he thinks and how he does things. And other times, he's not. He just feels maybe a little eccentric. And I think that, I don't know, when I first started reading the book, the way she writes him, I almost put it down. I was so many words. The way it's written is okay, let me look at this thesaurus and pick out any word I can think of to make it difficult to read. But that, she doesn't do that usually. It's I don't know why. It feels sometimes they get too much into his analytical brain, so he's coming off as autistic. But and it also too, I will say, has one of the weirdest sex scenes I've ever read, which is again like showing like it's the way he's thinking is just not thinking like a normal person. So I decided to give a reading of the weirdest sex scene I've ever read. She leaned in to kiss him, and he kissed her, and then she put her hand between his legs, wrapping her fingers around the cylindrical chamber of blood sponges that was his, and every penis. He felt the corpora cavernosa, commanded by nerve messages from his subconscious brain, fill up with blood, and the tunica abluginea membrane, the penis's straitjacket, trap the blood inside. He pulled away. Like, it's just so, like, who writes a sex scene like that? Especially because Sam Mazer, he's not a doctor. He didn't go to school for biology or for anatomy and physiology or for anything like that. He went to school, he was a math major at Harvard. Like, he's a programmer, but he knows every little bit about how his penis works, I guess. And it's like, but it's not like that all the time. Like, other times, like, Sam Mazer is written, like, you really feel for him because he's going through so much pain. And he kind of loves Sadie Green, but he can't be touched by her. Like, he has, like, a phobias and stuff. Again, I mean, he definitely seems like he's on the autism spectrum, but, like, I'm not sure, like, how it's written, kind of, like, I don't know where you'd put him. It's probably, he'd be, like, on Asperger's. But, and Sadie Green, like, she is very interesting. I think, like, and she's written better. Like, you understand her rationale more and, like, what she's going through. I mean, it's definitely a little bit trope heavy because, I mean, like, she's, this game designer that has like a famous indie game is teaching a course at MIT about programming, and of course she falls in love with him and he abuses her, and that's a big part of the story. And I mean, I think that what I didn't like the most about this, because I mean, the characters are likable, and it's really interesting how, like, when they're developing the games, like, obviously they can't be too exact in how exactly the game works, because then you might as well just make the game. So, like, he kind of lets the reader kind of play the game in their mind and how it might look. But I think what I dislike the most about it is so much of the conflict between Sadie and Mazer is that and it's another trope that I hate, but almost most stories tend to do, especially in modern day, is that, like, all the conflict is because people don't talk to each other. Like, throughout the book, I mean, all of their like confrontations, all their problems, that why they hate each other for a lot of the book, they're like frenemies, is just because they don't talk to each other. And it's kind of frustrating because there's it's, most of the stuff is one person's like misinterpreting something, or not, like, thinking something happened but maybe it didn't. And, like, so much of that is like that. Like in the first time is that he didn't tell her that she was filling out timesheets, and it was like a charity case. He believed it was a charity case, but if they just talked to each other, they said, "Hey, you know, I'm playing this game with them. I'm getting hours while I'm having fun with you. Don't worry about it." Like, if it would have been so quick to just say something like that. And other times, it's like she thinks that when she gets back with her abusive boyfriend, so they can use their game engine in their game, and, like, she blames Sam for that, for her being with her boyfriend again for multiple years, an abusive relationship. But, like, I understand, like, but, like, he didn't really know the relationship was abusive, and he didn't even know she was dating him at the time. So, like, but there is stuff that seems like maybe they did think that he thought that it might have been that, but he didn't know. Like so much of that stuff is like, if they sat down and talked to each other, and it's like this. I wish so much of the book is them fighting with each other, and I kind of hate that. But I wish that more of the book had them working together. Like, so much of the confrontation is kind of like sours me on it. You know, when I think about it, back to it, I wish I had more time with them making games and having, like, actually being in love, but not actually physical love, but, like, And then there's a lot of great interactions too with Marks, which is like their producer, and both of them are like best friends too. And there's a lot of great stuff with other characters, like with like essentially. I always thought like if this was the real world, their games would have inspired gaming culture like heavily. But of course, obviously, like it's like an alternate version of it where everything else is the same except for what they made. So it's kind of cool the way they do it, with like their game company like buys like other games and produces them, from people that they bring in, and that's kind of like almost like inspired. Like the games that were inspired by their games are also from their game studio. But like there's a lot of interesting stuff together, and I know like there is like they bring in stuff like towards the end. There, I don't want to spoil anything, but like something big happens, something dramatic happens, and like how Gabrielle writes about it is like it's obviously like a lot of the characters hate shooters, and if and like the bad guys that come in the third act to like mess things up, they only play Call of Duty, and they're homophobic, they're racist, and they love guns, and they're like, oh, what kind of games do you like? Oh, Call of Duty. And then, oh, shooters, I see. And like even like how she writes about it is like obviously no one's killed anyone with a virtual gun. Like it's the way it's like she almost does blame video games for it, and I'm like, there's no evidence. Like, she even says there's no evidence that it does, but like the way she writes it, it's kind of like she's almost blaming games for some of the stuff, and it's just kind of odd. Like I'm not, I don't consider, I'm not a casual gamer, but I played every game pretty much. I played all sorts of games, and I haven't played a Call of Duty for a while because they just went really downhill. But I do enjoy shooters, and I've never shot a gun except for like in Boy Scouts back in the day. But I don't know. It's some of it is just it's a little. I don't like some of it, but then also like the emotion is really strong and it's really written well, and I did really enjoy it. It's just like parts of it are kind of goofy, and I know towards the end too. I won't spoil it, but like a certain part of it is played out like inside of a game that they made, and it doesn't really work because this would have taken, like at that point you're probably like around the 10 years ago, like around the 2010s or so, I think. But they mentioned that BioShock 2 came out that around that same time that they're talking about, and I feel like that they no game would be able to kind of do what they do unless you're role playing mostly inside your head. But like the way that it's written, it seems like a lot of stuff is actually happening in the game, and we don't have a game that can do that like now, where a person could actually craft something unique, and then like a go board using wood and from trees, and then blowing glass stones and stuff, and they actually play the game inside the game. Like no game has been able to do that yet. But that's just kind of like if they do that to kind of just to inspire things to happen in the fourth act, the final. And again, I did really like it. It's interesting, but I didn't like. It's not my favorite book I've read in a while. It's fine, It's just I just kind of wish the characters weren't at each other's throat for so much of the book. I wish they just would talk to each other, But it is very interesting, and I would recommend it. Probably give it like a 7.75 out of 10. It's an interesting novel. I would be interested to read more from Gabrielle Zevin, because I mean it's her writing is good. It's just a little inconsistent at times. But thanks for watching. If you want to see more of me, you can subscribe down below. Thanks.